It's the wonder of you. Oh, hey everybody, Hugh here. Welcome back. This episode, I'm going to look at the sweet bell peppers that we've grown here. To give you a quick overview on it, we sowed them in the first week of the year. We minded them through the spring, got them growing. They started to produce fruit in midsummer, and here we are at the end of summer, and they're still fruiting. So that's the quick overview. I shall go into a little bit more detail. They are all grown in pots, and for this episode it's going to be purely based around the sweet peppers and how we've done them, what has worked and what we've to watch out for even, and maybe what hasn't worked, as well as a couple of questions I have at the end as well. So welcome along to this episode. You can see some fine healthy plants. I think these are the best bell peppers I've had over the years, and certainly in the past 2 or 3 years they're the best bell peppers that we've had. The sowing of them, first week in January. I found last year and maybe the year before that we had sown them in maybe the 1st of February, end of January, early February, and the plants themselves didn't fruit then until quite late. They didn't produce the fruits for harvesting until probably about this time of year. And some advice from people I've been chatting to is that, sow them just after Christmas, get them sown, bring them on. It's a bit more work early on that you have to mind them, but once you do, you get the earlier fruiting, which is actually has happened very well. For these particular ones, as I say, the first week in January, they germinated fairly readily. The seeds came from some of our own seed of one that we had saved from last year, so it was seeds that I suppose had acclimatized a little bit to our conditions. They germinated quite readily. I think within 2 weeks we had seedlings that were actually grown. The conditions that we had them in at that stage, well, they had been brought on in the little propagator to start with, which has an average temperature of about 20 degrees there or thereabouts, and it was in one of the lighter, brighter windows. So very nice conditions, and they basically stayed in that heated propagator. Even though I had used it for other seeds like tomatoes and that, it had stayed in that propagator probably for mid-March maybe, there or thereabouts, as much as we could, even if we were taking them out during the day to give other plants a chance to get in there to heat up the soil for them. They were certainly going back in at night. And of course it's like an A4 size propagator. It is a little small one. They do like good light even at a young stage, so they don't go leggy, so that was important as well. Soil wise, well, as you know, most of my compost are soil based with some manure added and some compost added as well. I think when I'm doing seedlings, it's less of the manure and more of the bought compost that actually goes into them. So it'll be a mixture of soil, bought compost, and like any young seedlings, they like open, free draining as well. So you'll always add in a little bit of perlite or grit or whatever it is that you have to open up the soil a little bit. Watering, again, looking after young seedlings like that, you don't want them too wet, you don't want them too dry, so it's getting that right balance of fairly regularly checking them with watering can or teapot or whatever it is that you have in hand, but not necessarily watering unless they need them. For potting on, it was very interesting because I did 2 different things with these plants that are here. These two lots of plants or 3 lots of plants that you see. This particular plant went literally from what was a germinated seedling into a small modular tray, and then from a small modular tray into I think about a P5 or a P7 pot, a pot about sort of so big. In that particular module there was 2 plants that I didn't separate. This particular pot and other ones like it, they went from the germinated seedling in one pot being pricked out into the modular trays, much like the bigger one here. But then they were separated out even further as they grew up a little bit. We separated them out, and that seems to have had, I don't know if it had a stunted effect, if that was it, or it just slowed, that extra step just slowed them down a little. So they went in from, I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but basically there was an extra step with these, whereas these guys, they just jumped from one size, the modular, into sort of a P5 or P7, and then into 2 litre and then into 3 litre. So they got them as good big plants before the flowering started. Whereas with these ones, there was an extra step in the potting process, which I'll eliminate next year, because I found that they were just slower and a little bit behind these guys. And that particularly came through of the busier spring, whereas this was in that sort of slightly bigger pot, so it was still growing. These were still in the modules, and we were busy doing the tomatoes and other plants as well. So I remember at one stage they were sitting there for just that step longer, maybe 2 or 3 weeks at that crucial stage, where it was like, with jeepers, we better pot those on and get them on quick. Whereas this one had that more space and it was actually growing, and there's a big difference in the size of the plant, as you can actually see. With the flowering stage, I think the trick that I've learned from this year, and I suppose from other years, is getting them as big as you can during the growth stage, because once they start to produce those flowers, then a lot of the energy goes into, you know, producing the flowers and then the fruits. So the plants then are more naturally stunted. Now I think that's my learning. It could, you could be saying, or it could be critical going, you know, it could be the size pots as well that they're going into. So there's a few different bits to learn from, or to try next year. And once they started to flower, then that's obviously where the growth goes. This particular big one, we've already had some large peppers back in June, back in midsummer, from this particular, and this is literally its second flush of peppers, if the camera picks it up there. Oh, it does, yeah. There's a second flush of peppers coming on there. So again, plenty of watering, a little bit of liquid feeding going on there, and it's very well. I was watching, I'm not sure was it Bill and Val or was it Steve, I'm not sure, I was watching one of the videos anyway, and they were talking about sweet peppers, and they were doing a bit of fruit tinning. So for me that was a case of, oh, I hadn't really thought of it before. I had researched it a little bit, but particularly on the smaller plants, you know, to actually thin out some of the fruit so you get some of the nice bigger size rather than a whole load of the small ones. So that's something just certainly to think about, and any opinions that you have, certainly let me know about them. And then at this time of year, you can see, is the camera picking that up? I'm holding it to the camera, I am. You can see plenty of lovely peppers growing on or going on there, which is lovely. So we'll harvest these and bring them indoors, and won't be too long before we're processing them, and by that I mean that they'll be chopped, frozen in smaller pieces into plastic bags in the freezer for using over winter. And it's a great way of preserving them and using them fresh then out of the freezer. As the temperatures begin to change here, it'll be interesting to see what happens and how much of these fruits develop. In between the flowering stage and the actual fruiting stage, what is that, about 6 to 8 weeks? Again, people who are more knowledgeable can let me know. But certainly, if we talk about 8 weeks from now, and because we're at the end of August, we're talking about the end of October, so temperatures will certainly have changed. We'll probably move these into the larger grow house that's there to see if they can give them that bit of extra heat for longer and a little bit of fleece over them. I do want to overwinter a couple of plants just to try. I have done them before. I found that the overwintering plants in the spring, unless you're really minding them, they don't do very well. And I think for myself, I was more enthusiastic with the young seedlings actually growing, so they got a little bit left behind. One of it was Bill and Val's video, because I'm only watching it the other day. They were talking about their overwintered peppers and how they did them, so I might take some tips from that. Bugs wise, can you see the copper wire, the bare copper wire around it? And of course that is to deter slugs coming up in the pots. They do love them, I don't know that I've been getting all the slugs. You can see there is holes in the leaf. What I found is when the slugs, you know, hit the fruits when they're young, they'll put a little hole in them, or even when they're slightly bigger, they'll put a hole in them, and then they'll eat them from the inside out, and the fruits just tend to wither and die. They're not very good quality at all. So keeping slugs off them is important, however we do that. As I say, it's the copper tape here, along with some nighttime torch visits if I've deemed it necessary. That tends to work. There's also, as I'm looking at it here and as I'm talking, there are some aphids walking around. Now, aphids haven't been a big problem on the plants this year. They really haven't. So quite happy. You know, the few aphids do develop, we just sort of rub them off. I won't be going spraying them with anything or with too much. And then there is red spider in the house here. I notice on the tomatoes in the back there's quite a lot of red spider in some of the older leaves, but it doesn't seem to have affected the peppers too much. That's maybe because I have them in a separate area. Maybe not, I'm not quite sure, but red spider doesn't seem to be a problem. And as I'm talking about overwintering, that is one of the pieces that you do have to consider, is that if you are keeping on older plants into the following year, are you bringing on some of the diseases and some of the problems with the young seedlings as well? So it is something to weigh up as well. Would it be easier just to start afresh? Soil wise, I did mention the when they're young seedlings, as they're older plants, they definitely like a richer soil. So any of the ones in the bigger pots like this, once they're going in there, that's back to my standard, you know, your third topsoil, third compost, and third manure as well. And just looking after them. They have been in the front part of the glass house here, which is typically quite bright. It's not overly shaded, and particularly this corner where they were sitting. And I'm just wondering, is there a point where they get too much sun? And if they do get too much sun, what does that too much sun look like? Will it make them abandon their fruits, or they dry out quicker? Maybe that helps them abandon their fruits. I'm not quite sure. So there's still some things unknown. But for this year, for the year of 2022, we have over 1 kilogram of produce already in the freezer, frozen or eaten, I should say, of sweet peppers. And we have more to come, as you can see. So very happy with that. So, quick overview again. So these are the sweet peppers, the sweet pepper video. This is what the video, the sweet pepper plants. That's what the video I've just done has been about. Basically started them off the first week in January, brought them on as young seedlings. If you can eliminate the sort of one of the potting stages, getting them as bigger plants before they start to fruit was a key learning for me this year. And then keeping them nice and warm. Temperature wise, they don't like going below certainly 10 or 12 degrees. That would be really their minimum temperature, I would think, from a growth stage. And certainly they would prefer something around the 20-25 degrees. So maintaining that as best as you actually can. Giving them a compost that's suitable for young seedlings to start with, and then giving them more richer compost as they grow. I don't like using too much liquid food here, but I have given these a couple of liquid feeds just to encourage the fruit and the plant's development. And here we are here the last week of August, and some wonderful fruits to harvest. As always, thanks for watching. Do remember to like and comment, and of course if you haven't already done so, do subscribe. And yeah, catch you on the next one. All the best for now. Take care. Bye bye.